Corvus Corax is the Primarch of the Raven Guard Space Marine Legion. Growing up as a revolutionary for the workers of Lycaeus, Corax became a master of guerrilla warfare and hit-and-run tactics, which he later incorporated into his legion's tactics. He remained true to the Emperor during the Horus Heresy, and as such, his legion took some of the heaviest losses of the war. Like his brothers, Corvus Corax was separated from the Emperor while still an infant and vanished into the depths of the galaxy. His pod was discovered by the local population on Lycaeus, the desolate moon of the planet Guerrilla, in Segmentum Tempestus. At this time, the planet was a technologically advanced forge world, providing its city-sized factories with minerals extracted from the non-atmospheric moon by legions of mine slaves. Under the iron watch of heavily armed guards, the inhabitants of Lycaeus, criminals, political opponents, and workers who had failed to meet their quotas, had long provided the rulers of Guerrilla a free and unlimited source of manpower. He was discovered by the slave girl Nasturi Ephrinia, and the locals referred to the white-skinned child who would become Corax as the Deliverer in their tongue. As a youth, they kept him from their masters, training him in the various skills they believed a leader and warrior needed: urban warfare, close combat, and demolitions, as well as political and philosophical matters. Ultimately, his abnormally fast maturation comforted the slaves, and they became fixed in their belief that he was the savior they had waited for. Educated to be a leader as well as a rebel, he began his task by organizing the workers into fight teams, promoting the best of the men as squad leaders. He then focused on building huge stockpiles of weapons, concealing them in numerous secret caches. He ordered a campaign of psychological warfare, launching riots and strikes to build up followers in the workers' rebellion and to stretch the enemy garrison's strength and morale to a breaking point. Waiting for the opportune time to strike, Corax's forces launched their attack, taking key security points and destroying them by crude force or sabotage, killing every man of the Lycaeus defense forces. When Guerrilla's rulers struck back, Corax was ready for them. He outmaneuvered and ambushed their forces on Lycaeus with his battle-hardened warriors, crushing their supply lines and striking the 5 biggest cities in Guerrilla with 1 atomic mining charge each. The charges were embarked on small transport shuttles and reached the surface via a supply gravity well. Soon their forces nearly destroyed and their vast factories unable to produce anything due to the mineral shortages, the tech guilds collapsed into civil war. While they mourned the thousands who had died in the nuclear bombardment of Guerrilla, millions of its people had been freed. Celebrating their victory, the inhabitants of Lycaeus renamed their home Deliverance. It is said that the Emperor appeared on Deliverance that day as the rebels celebrated. After a day and a night with his son, Corax agreed to join his father and was united with his sons, the 19th Legion, also known as the Raven Guard. Nothing exact is known of their conversation, save that one condition of Corax's acceptance was the help of the Emperor in the task of bringing peace to Guerrilla. Soon, the Adeptus Mechanicus stepped in, and the world was rebuilt to the benefit of the Imperium, while the Black Tower, which once housed the Guards of the Moon, became the Ravenspire, the fortress monastery of the Legion. With matters in his home sorted, the young Primarch took to the stars with his father. During the Great Crusade, Corax's talents for planning and sabotage were of great effect, and the Raven Guard, fighting frequently under the orders of Horus, became renowned for an unmatched ability in covert ops, sabotage, infiltration, and lightning strikes. However, despite their frequent collaboration, the pair never saw eye to eye, and after an argument, the two Primarchs nearly fought each other, and Corax left Horus's command. Around this time, Corax also began to display great ill favor and mistrust towards the Terran-born warriors within his legion as opposed to those from Deliverance. A large part of this was due to Corax's disgust towards the Terrans for their use of terror tactics, which reminded him of the Night Lords. Corax had an intense repulsion for the Sons of Curse and sought to transform his legion into a force for the liberation of the oppressed, rather than marauding terrorists solely dedicated to destroying their enemies. While Corax bitterly opposed Horus violently sacrificing Terran-born recruits in the Battle of Gate 42, he nonetheless began to quietly purge the Terrans in his own ranks by sending them on forgotten crusades to the galactic rim and unexplored space. As the crusade went on, Curse and Corax developed even more animosity towards each other. The two were frequently compared to each other, as they were physically similar, had similar childhoods, and practiced similar legion tactics. However, unlike Curse, Corax did not suffer from premonitions and also retained a degree of his humanity, as he did not engage in the mass slaughter that the Night Haunter was known for. As they continued to be compared to each other, their mutual distrust only grew. During the Carinae Retribution, tensions between the two came to a head, with Corax confronting Curse over his mass slaughter of civilians. The two nearly came to blows, but Corax was able to convince Sevatar to pressure Curse to withdraw. During the Drop Site Massacre, Corax was among the 3 Primarchs, leading the Loyalist effort against Horus's betrayal. Underestimating the extent of the betrayal, he, Vulcan, and Ferrus Manus sallied forth to engage the traitors, only to find themselves fully encircled by 8 legions of heretics. In the battle, he personally engaged Wordbearer's Primarch Lorgar in combat, impaling him with his lightning claws. However, just as he was about to finish Lorgar, Conrad Curze intervened and forced Corax to retreat. Though grievously wounded and forced to fight a guerrilla war on Istvan V for the next 98 days, he escaped the slaughter with a handful of loyal Space Marines thanks to the arrival of a small Raven Guard navy led by Captain Brannan Nev. Captain Branner had been left as reserve on Deliverance, and he departed the moon only due to strange dreams haunting the nights of Prefector Marcus Valerius, the commander of Therian Cohort, a loyalist Imperial Army regiment. After engaging and neutralizing a patrolling Iron Warriors armored column, Corax and his allies were able to extract with the Loyalist flotilla. Unbeknownst to both sides, the Alpha Legion had been observing the battle and allowed Corax's escape to further the plans of Alfarius. After departing the Istvan system, Corax sent back to Deliverance all the other remaining ships, while he himself headed to Terra to seek the counsel of the Emperor. The Primarch was desperate as the Imperium was collapsing, and his ranks had been mauled by the massacre. Due to their heavy casualties, he knew they couldn't provide the manpower their Emperor desperately needed. Moreover, on Terra, Corax was not granted permission to see the Emperor due to his work on the man-made corridor to the Eldar Webway. The Emperor, sensing his son's desperation, was somehow able to divert part of his psychic might in order to grant Corax what he was looking for. Through a psychic vision, Corax asked for a rapid and effective solution to restore his legion's might. The Emperor, feeling the righteous intent behind his son's question, implanted in his brain some selected memories concerning the project for the creation of the Primarchs and the exact place where the ancient laboratory was to be found on Terra. However, he warned his son that the laboratory was well guarded by a complex system called the Labyrinth, and it was up to Corax himself to find a way to pass through it. Corax was successful in this task, and what he obtained was the common genome all Primarchs shared. From this genome, through tough selection, the Emperor created each of the 20, granting each of them some particular and well-defined traits, such as psychic powers or increased strength, along with a number of commonly shared feats such as increased growing rate or regenerative powers. Before Corax departed the Sol system with this new technology, he was asked by Malcador to take part in the Perditum incursion on traitor-occupied Mars. Corax agreed, though it later turned out to be an elaborate ambush planned by the Dark Mechanicum under Lucas Chrome. However, most of the Loyalists were able to escape, Corax included. Once back on Deliverance, Corax tasked his chief apothecary, Vincente VI, with retrieving the correct Raven Guard genome and starting the direct implantation on fresh recruits. With the assistance of the Loyalist Mechanicum Genitor Nexin Orlandriaz, Six accomplished the task and went so far as to approach complete removal of the progenoid glands. From the correct genome, in fact, the whole Space Marine would have grown directly, all his enhanced organs already present, with the only exception being the black carapace, which had to be separately created due to its synthetic nature. With this knowledge, around 500 new, war-ready Space Marines were created in a few weeks. It is at this point that an infamous treachery took place. Some Astartes of the Alpha Legion, in a plan orchestrated by the Primarch Alpharius Omegon themselves, infiltrated the Raven Guard after the Drop Site Massacre by grafting the facial traits of some dead Raven Guards over the faces of their own legionaries. According to the Cabal, their objective was to hinder the Raven Guard using their obtained knowledge, as their Astartes cloning project would have disrupted the balance of the war. Of course, Alpharius Omegon also aimed to recover the secret knowledge in order to expand their own legion too. With the help of renegade Mechanicum Magos Unithrax and his forces on Kievar, the Alpha Legion tainted the original genome recovered from the laboratories of the Emperor on Terra. This was accomplished by introducing a virus-vectored mutagen based on demonic blood. Thus, the successive implantations resulted in still operational but deeply mutated Astartes, exhibiting scales, horns, fangs, tails, overgrown muscles, and other profane features. However, while the plan to corrupt the new Astartes was successful, the attempt by the Alpha Legion to destroy the Legion's gene seed was not. After this outburst of mutations and the discovery of the Alpha Legion infiltrators, Corax decided to stop the rebuilding of the Raven Guard and led his warriors, along with all the war-capable mutated Marines, in small squads, striking like lightning on the enemy's weak spots. Following the Battle of Ravendelve, Corax was still committed to combating the forces of Horus. Compensating for his devastated legion's small numbers, he conducted raids, hit-and-run attacks, and instigated uprisings on traitor-controlled worlds. These included actions on Constanix II, Scarato, and Carandiru. Eventually, Corax reassembled the entirety of his surviving legion at the Dexius system. There, he contemplated the future of the Raven Guard, with many of his legion wishing to return to Terra to aid the Emperor against Horus's offensive. After evading a Night Lord's attack, Corax was again influenced by the visions of Marcus Valerius, who saw that the Space Wolves were on the verge of destruction. Choosing to help his brother, Corax led the Raven Guard in the Battle of Yarant to aid the Space Wolves against traitor forces. During the battle, Corax led a suicidal last stand alongside Bjorn, but after witnessing the arrogance and vanity of Horus's forces, realized that it was not up to him to determine when he would die. He was a servant of the Emperor and would continue to aid him against the traitors until he met his end. Thus, Corax led an evacuation from Yarant and expressed his intent to continue resisting the traitorous War Master from the shadows. Corax and Russ made for Deliverance, eventually meeting up with Lionel Johnson at the Raven Guard's Fortress Monastery. The Lion was quick to question the Raven Lord's absence from major fronts of the war, but his ire was put to rest by Russ, who pointed at the survival of his own legion as evidence of their worth. Russ declared he would join the Lion's crusade of vengeance, including warriors equipped with new Mark VI power armor produced on Kievar. Corax, however, was cautious to commit his bloodied legion to what he saw as a needless and spiteful waste, and only assigned a small expeditionary force of his Raven Guard to the Lion's forces. Even in this role, Corax's forces were used to eliminate key enemy targets ahead of the main Dark Angel's fleet, and their efforts spared entire worlds from annihilation. Raven Guard forces later took part in the Siege of Barbarous, assailing the homeworld of the Death Guard alongside the Dark Angels and Space Wolves. By the time Horus had been defeated and Guilliman had relieved the Siege of Terra, most of the Imperium was still unaware whether Corax was alive or dead. During the Great Scouring, he was the only surviving loyal Primarch to not sit upon the newly christened Grand Council of Reconstruction, and he set himself outside of the Imperium's command structure, following his own objectives as he restocked his legion. By the time Corax had managed to rebuild his sons, the Horus Heresy had ended, and Guilliman's new Codex Astartes decreed that the legions were to be split into smaller chapters to prevent such a heresy from happening again. Knowing that Guilliman's vision was true, Corax agreed to split his forces, but remained unable to forget the growling monsters that he had personally created. After pondering for hours as to what should be done, he decided to administer the Emperor's peace to the ones who remained, praying for their souls and his. Then, racked with guilt, he locked himself in his chamber in the Ravenspire, begging for the Emperor's mercy. Nobody knows if he received the absolution he required, but a year to the day after he had locked himself in, he left the tower and Deliverance on a course toward the Eye of Terror. His last recorded words to the Imperium were nevermore. Shortly after he disappeared, the First Black Crusade came to a head, and Rogel Dawn was slain. Corax went on to hunt the traitor Primarchs, seeking revenge for the Drop Site Massacre. At some point, he became mutated by the powers of the warp, turning into a creature made of darkness and shadow itself. Using his new abilities, Corax wreaked havoc on a word-bearer's demon world in the Eye of Terror. Far beyond the abilities of average word-bearers, the demon Primarch Lorgar himself appeared before Corax, and the two engaged in a vicious duel. Corax managed to dominate the battle, forcing Lorgar to retreat and close the portal he had arrived from. As Lorgar vanished, Corax vowed that he would hunt down and slay the demon Primarch. He then turned into his wraith form and dove into the Eye of Terror. He has not been seen since. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.